The spoils of war. The scorched sky above Colony Hespera 9 still glowed with the embers of orbital bombardment. Craters stitched across the land like old scars, torn open again. The air smelled of plasma fire and death. Human resistance had been crushed. What was left were smoldering ruins and silenced radios. General Kale Vorix stood tall on the battlefield, his polished obsidian armor untouched by the chaos around him. He was no stranger to conquest. His record bore the names of 29 systems subdued and 11 species brought to heel. Humanity, he had thought, would be no different. A low-ranking enforcer trotted toward him, helmet smudged with ash. "General Vorix, sir, we found something." Kale turned, unimpressed. Another cache, or another coward hiding under rubble? The enforcer hesitated. Neither. It's a child, a human infant, female, alive. That caught his attention. "Show me." They led him into a collapsed bunker, where a small emergency pod had miraculously remained sealed during the bombardment. The charred remains of a woman's body lay nearby, shielding the device with her own. Inside, a baby girl, no more than a few weeks old, stared upward with piercing gray eyes that were not clouded by confusion or fear, but something else. Something he couldn't quite name. "She's the only survivor in a rebel outpost," the enforcer muttered. "Scans show no augmented DNA, no implants. Just baseline human." Kale knelt, meeting the baby's gaze. She didn't cry, didn't even flinch. "A warrior's daughter," he murmured. "Or bait, left behind to be found." "She's useless," another officer said. "Shall we dispose of her?" Kale raised one gloved hand. "No, I'll take her." "You what?" The officer blinked. "General, that's a human. I know exactly what she is." He cradled the infant in his arms with unsettling care. She remained silent, still watching him with eyes far too knowing. "We've broken their armies, erased their leaders, burned their cities," Kale said, rising. "Now we carry a symbol of our dominion. A human child, raised by the Empire, raised by me." The silence around him was thick with disbelief. The ship was the Crimson Glaive, a dreadnought 2 kilometers long and armed with enough firepower to glass a moon. Luma, as Kale eventually named the girl, became an oddity aboard, a living trophy. Some officers saw her as a pet, others as a grotesque mockery of the defeated. Kale saw something else, a challenge. She was quiet, observant. By age 3, she walked the halls with balance unnatural for her kind. By 5, she mimicked officers' speech, memorized the patrol schedules, and could identify which of Kale's men disliked her just by how they blinked. She never wept. Not once. Still, many aboard protested her presence. "She's a security threat," said Commander Urel. "Her kind may be gone, but that one might be born with the same flame they all carried. She will burn for us now," Kale replied coldly. "She will remind the galaxy who won." That night, while Luma slept in her private chamber surrounded by high-level locks and sensors, a junior technician examined the bundle that had been found beside her, one forgotten under the ashes. Inside was a simple metal chain and a charm worn by age. Etched into the back, barely legible. "Property of Commander R. Voss." The technician frowned. The name rang distant bells, a whisper from war records. He logged the artifact, assigned it to storage, and noted it in the database without alerting higher-ups. He didn't understand its significance yet, but he would soon. Years passed, and Luma thrived. Kale spared no resources. She was trained in language, empire history, strategy, etiquette, and even unarmed combat. As an experiment, he told himself, just to see what a human child raised by his hand could become. By age 10, she beat adult officers in tactical simulations. By 12, she rewired a broken AI assistant using only observation. She spoke with the formality of a noble and walked like a predator. Yet something in her remained untouched. At night, she stared at the stars through the viewing dome, not with wonder, but hunger. In the lowest deck of the Crimson Glaive, that old technician returned to the artifacts log. Commander R. Voss. He dug deeper. Old Empire war files were locked, but not to someone curious enough to bypass a firewall. Rachel Voss. humanity's last supreme commander, the one responsible for the decimation of Imperial Fleet Sigma, the woman who detonated the Polaris Rift device and erased 3 Empire outposts in a single stroke. Feared, brutal, brilliant, and according to the files, presumed dead at Vesta Prime, along with her infant daughter. The technician went pale. He rushed to his terminal and pulled up the general's logs. Luma's origin, her discovery, the ruins of the bunker. Coordinates matched. He stared at the necklace, his hands trembling. Luma was Voss's daughter. He hesitated, then made a decision that would change the galaxy. He hit send. Legacy of the Voss. 10 years aboard an Imperial dreadnought had not dulled Luma's mind. If anything, she had grown sharper in silence. Every lesson, every word spoken around her, every movement of Kale Vorix's cold, calculating officers, she absorbed it all. She learned the cadence of military speech, the pattern of security patrols, the hidden meanings in what people didn't say. But most of all, she learned how to pretend. Pretend to be tame, obedient, harmless. But her mind was always racing. She had questions no one would answer. Why did the officers flinch when they thought she wasn't looking? Why did Kale sometimes stare at her as if she were a ghost? She got her first partial answer the day she slipped into the restricted archives. The Crimson Glaive's databanks were protected by multiple AI guardians, programs designed to crush intrusions and isolate anomalies. But Luma wasn't trying to crash them. She simply wanted to listen. At age 14, she coaxed a personal assistant drone into thinking she was a junior lieutenant requesting historical war data for Imperial cultural studies. She used a forged command pass, painstakingly pieced together over months from overheard codes and idle security habits. And just like that, doors opened. What she found wasn't just data, it was legacy. The name Voss appeared first in battle records, then in propaganda reels, then in Imperial threat assessment stamped top priority, eliminate on sight. Commander Rachel Voss. Luma's heart stilled. The woman in the footage had her same eyes, her same defiant expression. Even the way she moved, methodical, but sharp like lightning coiled inside steel. Voss wasn't just a soldier. She was a terror, a tactician who had fought the Empire to a standstill while Earth burned. She was the one who had sacrificed everything to save the last human fleets, detonating the Polaris Rift device to tear open space-time and erase the Empire's advantage in the Orion Belt. Presumed dead. No body recovered. But one line buried deep in the report made Luma freeze. Subject Voss was last seen entering Outpost Delta Beta on Hespera 9, carrying an infant. She blinked. Hespera 9. That was where she had been found, where her entire existence began or ended, depending on who told the story. She looked at the date on the report. 2 weeks before the Empire declared Voss terminated. Luma's hands trembled. She touched the small chain she'd worn for years, the necklace found beside her, dismissed as junk. She turned it over. Faint, but visible now under scrutiny. Property of Commander R. Voss. She didn't cry. That wasn't how she responded to pain. She felt cold fire seep in her chest instead. Her mother had been a legend, a ghost they thought they'd buried. And she, Luma, was the ember they had failed to stamp out. She stared at the screen as her heart hardened. They had raised her like a trophy, like a slave with invisible chains. But they had raised her well. That night, she entered Kale Vorix's private dining chamber without being summoned. The guard stood, startled. One reached for his sidearm, but Vorix raised a hand. Let her in. Luma stepped forward, the necklace held out like a question. You knew. Kale looked at the pendant, then at her. I suspected. Then why take me? Kale sipped his wine, as though the galaxy weren't cracking open around them. Because I wanted to see what a Voss would become when stripped of Earth, when shaped by us. I wanted to own the last ember of your fire. She said nothing. The walls seemed to pulse with her rage. Kale set down his goblet. You were a test. When I may have failed, why not kill me now? Because I'm not sure I can. His voice had no fear, just grim respect. It shook her more than a threat would have. You carry more than your mother's name, girl. You carry her defiance, her genius, her hatred. He leaned closer. So what now? Will you kill me and take the ship? Will you restart your species' lost war? Luma didn't blink. Not yet, but I will remind them who we were. The next morning, the Crimson Glaive's communications, AI, triggered an alert. A deep space signal had been sent through a hidden channel, encrypted in an old Terran military code. A code only one class of officer had ever used. The Voss protocol. It pinged across subspace, awakening long-dormant beacons, archives, satellites. The signal wasn't a call for help. It was a declaration. Somewhere in the outer fringe, human sleeper cells received it. Scattered rebels hiding on backwater moons, exiled fleets in deep cryo, data ghosts embedded in forgotten networks. They saw the signal and the name attached to it. Voss lives. One by one, hidden lights began to flare across the Empire's edge. Far from the front lines, deep in the Imperial Archive core on Corvallis Prime, a historian reviewed decrypted war files on the human collapse. He paused at an incoming report flagged Imperial Priority 1. Alert. Voss Protocol reactivated. Below it, in simple white text, a single phrase flickered into existence. You took a child. You raised a Voss. The historian's mouth went dry. He stood up, shaking, and ran for the High Council chambers. The blood of Earth. Kale Vorix rarely knew fear. But as he stood before the holographic projection of a dozen High Lords, each one shouting, demanding, accusing, he felt a pressure he had not known since the fall of Terra. He knew what she was. Lord Zur of the Outer Ring spat, his image flickering red with rage. You took her in, raised her aboard a flagship, and now the entire border is lighting up with Voss code. She was contained, Kale said evenly, until the moment she chose not to be. You allowed this fire to reignite. No, Kale replied, turning away from the council. You failed to extinguish it. He terminated the link. Around him, bridge officers avoided his gaze. Every terminal in the Crimson Glaive now carried the same unauthorized alert, one that no one could delete. Voss lives, and she did. Somewhere in the bowels of his ship, Luma moved through shadow, leaving disruption in her wake. She no longer hid. Not truly. Luma had spent the past month sowing seeds, reprogramming maintenance drones, disabling internal tracking, embedding corrupted firmware in weapon systems. The Dreadnought was still Kale's in name, but its heart now beat to her rhythm. She walked the corridors as if she owned them, and for the first time, the crew didn't stop her. Some feared her. Others remembered stories of Rachel Voss. All understood that she wasn't a girl anymore. She was a reckoning. She entered the engine room without clearance, and no one raised a weapon. She spent hours rerouting emergency subspace relays to form a communication web hidden in the ship's waste heat signature. She didn't speak of revolution. Not yet. But every time a console flickered and displayed her last name, the crew's silence deepened. They weren't loyal to Kale. Not anymore. They were watching to see who would win. Kale stood in his command chamber, staring at an old data pad, a decrypted file from the Imperial Archives. Rachel Voss, final statement, confidential debrief. If this is found, I'm likely dead. But my daughter lives. The Empire thinks it has won, but fire doesn't die. It waits, buries itself, evolves. Her name is Luma. She'll be the blade you didn't see coming. If she survives and she learns what we were, she'll finish what we started. Kale set the pad down slowly. He had trained her, fed her, watched her become the sharpest mind he'd ever seen. And now, she turned that blade toward him. A small smile touched his lips. So this is what it means, he whispered, to raise a Voss. Luma stood on the outer observation deck, stars glinting across the void. She remembered being a child, watching them with wonder. Now, she looked at them as tactical objectives. The AI she'd reprogrammed, an obsolete NAV assistant called Turn, hovered beside her. You're activating more cells, it said, voice calm. Human signatures are rising across the fringe sectors. I know, she said. Do you plan to fight them all? Alone? No, her voice was steel. I plan to remind them what we are. She turned, cloak flaring, and moved through the deck toward the command elevator. Today was the day. The dreadnought was no longer Kale's fortress. It was hers. He just hadn't accepted it yet. The command bridge hissed open. Guards turned, startled. Kale rose slowly from his throne-like chair at the center. He didn't reach for a weapon. You could have escaped, he said. Called the rebels. Started your war elsewhere. I don't run, Luma replied. Vosses don't run. He studied her. She looked so much like Rachel now. The way she held herself. The weight in her stare. Then what do you want, girl? Control. He chuckled. You think you can take the ship from me? I already did. On cue. Every light in the room flickered. Console screens turned blue, then black. Then one by one, they reactivated, each displaying the same message in Earth Standard. Command Authority, Luma Voss, authorized. Weapons system spun up, targeting the bridge exits, but not her. Officers backed away from their stations. Kale stared, lips parting in awe. You rewrote the entire core chain. She nodded. 10 years of watching. 10 years of access. You gave me the keys, Kale. I just waited for the right door. His gaze darkened. You think this is victory? No, she said. This is the beginning. Kale charged. Despite his age, he was fast, augmented, brutal. A dozen years of war lived in every motion. But Luma had studied him, trained in his patterns. She ducked his first strike, drove a blade into the joint of his armor, and spun. Blood sprayed. Metal cracked. But Kale smiled even as he staggered. You've learned well, he gasped. You taught me, she whispered, and drove her blade into his heart. He fell to his knees, staring up at her, mouth moving soundlessly. Then he toppled to the floor. Silence reigned. The bridge crew watched as Luma stepped over Kale's body and seated herself in the command chair. Turn, she said calmly. Signal the fleet. Send the message. The AI's voice crackled through the ship. This is Luma Voss, daughter of Rachel. The Empire raised me. Now I rise against it. All hidden cells, all scattered children of Earth, rise with me. We were never gone. They just let one of us grow up. Across the stars, hidden ships activated. Stealth fleets emerged from the dark. Human weapons once thought destroyed came online. The blood of Earth stirred. When a name was heard, the ripple became a wave. The signal Luma Voss sent didn't just reach Earth's remnants. It echoed across systems that had long forgotten the warmth of humanity. It lit up ancient caches buried beneath alien soil, ignited deep cryo vaults of hidden Terran warriors, and whispered through the void to anyone who had ever fought beneath the flag of Earth. One name had returned, and it changed everything. In the imperial capital of Aurelian Prime, 1,000 light-years from the front, Grand Archivist Selen sat frozen as the transmission replayed for the 10th time. Luma Voss, daughter of Rachel. We were never gone. You just let one of us grow up. He wasn't a soldier, but he felt a soldier's fear. The name Voss wasn't just a label. It was a scar, a memory the Empire had tried to erase, because Rachel Voss hadn't just fought them. She had humiliated them, outmaneuvered their fleets, crushed their pride, and now her daughter was speaking in her voice. On the frontier, Imperial garrisons started to fall without warning, not through brute force, but betrayal. Entire platoons of human conscripts, long oppressed and re-educated by the Empire, turned on their masters when they heard the name. They whispered it to one another like a secret prayer. Voss. They didn't need orders. They remembered. Orbital stations went dark. Fleet patrols vanished. Weapons once thought lost were reactivated by ancient Earth codes, each one bearing the sigil of an eagle fractured by war, but never broken. And all the signals traced back to one ship, the Crimson Glaive, no longer a symbol of Imperial dominance. It had become a rallying point for the resistance. Luma sat in her new war room, surrounded by command officers she hadn't appointed. They had chosen her, each of them once Imperial, each of them now changed by the name. Reports poured in, dozens of outposts fallen, human colonies rising, old alliances reforming. But one stood out. A code had burst from a Terran sleeper fleet, long presumed destroyed. This is Admiral Chun of the 5th Polaris Line. We stand with Voss, the last of Earth's elite, hidden for 2 decades in the dark between stars alive. Luma's fingers tightened around the edge of the console. Her voice was steady, but her heart was racing. "We're not just survivors anymore," she said. "We're a nation." The Empire responded. High Lord Zur mobilized the Sovereign Armada, a fleet of 1,000 capital ships. Aurelian Prime declared Voss a galactic-level insurgent, issuing bounties so vast that entire mercenary guilds mobilized to chase her. But every ship they sent disappeared. Every assassin turned traitor or corpse. They had forgotten what it meant to fight humans on their own terms, especially Voss. The final stand came at Varellan's Maw, a nebula-shrouded choke point on the Empire's edge. The Sovereign Armada arrived with all its fury. Luma stood aboard the Crimson Glaive, now repainted in black and silver, the eagle sigil of Earth shining across its hull. Thousands of rebel ships flanked her, patched-together cruisers, stealth corvettes, awakened dreadnoughts from the old wars. It wasn't a proper fleet. It was a firestorm of survivors, and they fought like demons. The battle lasted 6 hours. Luma outflanked them, just like her mother had once done, used the nebula currents to cloak their approach, targeted their command ships with precision born of years inside Imperial war rooms. She didn't just win, she humiliated them. At the center of the wreckage, she opened a system-wide channel. "To the Empire, you raised me in your image. You thought you'd broken Earth by taking her children, but you taught me how to fight, how to lead, and in doing so, you trained your own downfall. We are not a memory. We are not ashes. We are the blood of Earth, and we are coming home." Then she signed off with the name they couldn't forget, Luma Voss. Across the galaxy, rebellion became war. And everywhere her name was heard, empires trembled, because they remembered what the last Voss had done. And now they knew she wasn't the end. She was just the beginning.